Thank you very much for staying with us. Last year was an eventful one for the United Kingdom, which lost its longest serving monarch, went through two prime ministers, and faced economic stagnation, financial turmoil, rampant inflation, and the cost of living crisis. To kick off 2023, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak set out five priorities, leading with pledges to have a half inflation, boost economic growth, and cut national debt, as well as addressing NHS waiting list on the issue of immigrants arriving to UK in small boats. However, since the EU referendum over 6 years ago and 2 years since new trade barriers with Europe came into force, all credible economic analysts suggest that leaving the bloc caused the UK serious economic harm, raising prices but not wages, reducing trade, preventing investment, and creating a significant worker shortage. Let's discuss this and many other major economic issues the UK is being faced with amid projection of an imminent recession. To do this, I'm being joined again live from the United Kingdom by the startup founder of the World Hackers, a friend of the house, Mr. Gbenga Onifade. Compliments of the season. It's really good to see you in 2023.
Good to hear your voice. Happy New Year.
Just before I came on set, I saw that JP Morgan has already expressed or is expecting contraction in UK's economy for 2023. What is your overview with the present situation? Do you agree to this submission?
Oh, absolutely. JP Morgan, they might have announced it a bit late, but I think that's actually been expected by almost everybody, really, because if you look at the statistics all around, the UK inflation is at a staggering 40-year high, which is a 9.2%, despite the fall we had from December to this month. We've been going from, over the last 2 years, we ran from 2.6% to a high of 10.1%. Which is, like I said again, we're looking at 5 times the recommended inflation. And if you look at all around what we've been having are strikes, there's been contraction in the economy, there's a credit card is at an all-time, borrowing is an all-time high. December, which we were looking forward to have a bit of a relief, it actually did show that people actually spend the least on record, or since record began. People thought Christmas might give us a little bit of a breather in December, but it hasn't actually fared well for the UK. And I think if the listeners do remember the little grievance we had with the Prime Minister Liz Truss, who decided to go the other way around and boost the economy with a very sharp, aggressive growth. That did a bit of a damage to the economy, and even though it was only a lasting 44 days in the economy, however, the damage is unprecedented. And of course, Rishi Sunak, the new prime minister, has been trying to reverse some of these things. And then again, I think one of the biggest investors in the UK, who's British himself, the Dyson CEO himself, actually called the government approach stupid yesterday, because he thought, okay, now instead of the government, everyone's got contrasting views. Okay, right? People, we talked about Brexit as well, which is another one. We've been sleeping over this for a while now as well. The effect hasn't actually fared very well. And again, the government also looking at, increasing corporation tax from 19% to 25%, which they think, okay, because of the unprecedented amounts they have actually been spending, so they thought we might take it out on the corporations themselves. But of course, this thing's going to pan out, or it's going to be an overfall back to the consumers. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of bad news all around. Whichever way you look at things. So yeah, JP Morgan have not been wrong. They just called it a little bit later, but I think the warning's actually been there on the wall for everybody to see.
A great way to start. Stagnation, financial turmoil. Now let's look at the energy price issue, which I think there was a little bit of reduction around August 2022, if I'm correct. What impact has that had, after the hike and a little bit of reduction, if I'm allowed to go that route? But what's the impact of that since August? How has it been?
Yeah, so energy prices have actually stagnated. There was a time, you just kept going up. But of course, the government gave the people a little bit of a relief in terms of a small booster, which they say is going to come in a monthly installments. just to help people take care of the energy, or just give people a bit of a cushion towards paying for these things. So one thing is, again, and which is actually contracted of falling to the economy as a result of that, is that the fact that people are paying. People are paying. People are looking to spend. So spending has gone up, but it hasn't actually gone up to people. It's actually gone to bills. So energy is actually kind of stabilized at this moment. Things are still quite high. And if I'm going to speak from a personal point of view, my energy has gone on a 500% just over within a year, or within a year's timeline. We're talking about minimum. Everyone's paying 300-400% in energy costs, and this has actually gone on to businesses as well. You got businesses paying 300-400% more than they usually pay. So things it hasn't actually kept going up, but it has actually stabilized. Based on what the economists and the experts are saying, we believe that inflation might just drop off a little bit, but we expect prices to still remain that high. So while inflation, the general inflation CPI, which measures inflation, and housing CPIH, the Consumer Price Index, as this is called, while the values might go down, the prices of things will generally remain high. We still have Russia, who called for a truce, which I think people called it I don't know if you want to call it a fake truce, which wasn't agreed upon. And as you can see, there's still building going on there. And Russia is a general key player when it comes to energy. I think at some point, the European Union, UK as well, inclusive, was trying to put a price, a fixed price on energy that they are willing to pay. But again, if you don't produce these things, you cannot put a price on what doesn't come to you. But that's how much you're willing to pay. They might not necessarily sell it to you, which means you've got to source for alternatives. And source an alternative is not that easy. It's not that cheap either. And coupled with the fact that we've had a really, really, it's been a desperate winter, unfortunately. So things haven't actually gone down. It has actually remained up, but it's not exactly going up further. It's actually remained at the peak of the prices. So unfortunately, people are still feeling the pinch in their pockets.
Feeling that pinch. Uncertainty about the industrial actions by some workers across UK. What is playing out around that, and what impact is that also having on the economy?
There you go. That's a brilliant question, actually. So if you think about the uncertainties all around, again, the economy and other people. So, the fact that we've got higher than expected inflation. So everyone is expecting everyone wants, they want the pay rise to match based on what they're getting. So even though you're getting a pay rise, but the fact that the inflation is higher, it's kind of left you, it's kind of left you worse than you are, really. So as a result of that, the government itself hasn't got the money. I mean, how can you afford these pay hikes that you are offering, or that these people are demanding? So in a way, people are going on strike saying, okay, we want a bit more. But one thing is that it sets a precedent. If one has been granted a pay rise by the government as a result of strike action, then of course another one is going to create a domino effect in a way. Another sector is they're going to demand this, and another sector and another sector. So what the government is doing in a way, which I kind of think is a bit smart. So they're guaranteeing, well, they're not guaranteeing, they're promising them a one-off payment. Okay, you get a one-off, while we fix the economy, okay? And of course, the government is actually playing it brilliantly and speaking to the people, because people understand that, as in the case of health workers, for example, you claps and give us a hug, that doesn't pay my bill, right? You can't just keep clapping for me as an NHS nurse. That does not pay my bill. But I'm going to give you a one-off payment to cushion this minor effect, while we focus on fixing the economy. And of course, this money can further be invested in infrastructures and in the services. But on the other hand, the government, while people are getting on strike, they are implementing new powers to make sure these strikes, or if you're going to have a strike in future, you're going to have a minimum service that has to be, make sure it's that remains unaffected. That's another one. But another thing is the fact that if all these payments have been granted to all these people who are going on strike, the mistake is the fact that it takes away from the economy, and therefore all this money that's meant to be put back into the economy to be able to boost the economy, if it's been put in people's pocket, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to to counter inflation as fast as we would like to. Well, speaking for the government anyway. So unfortunately, it's kind of like a chicken and egg effect or situation. Which comes first, or how do you deal with it? It's something which unfortunately the government is a headache. It's not a good headache to have, unfortunately, right now. But things are going to take a while longer as a result of these strikes. But ultimately, people want to work and know why they are working and feel better for working, not just working for the sake of working and whiling away their time and feeling poorer in that means.
Interesting stuff. The easing of COVID-19 restrictions in China is something that many see that should impact the United Kingdom positively. Manufacturing, movement of raw materials and all of that. Do you think that has helped one way or the other to bring a little bit of stability back into the United Kingdom's economy?
Absolutely. It would have been, I think it came in a bit too late for China. So if you go back 2020 to 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, when the world declared the pandemic as the seriousness and the raw data was coming out, there was a little bit of transgressive approach from China. I think people did not trust the data that was coming out, and China didn't really have China had a bit of a mini lockdown, but things were booming back then while the whole world was in dire straits. So in a way, we kind of had like a pulley and lever. So while the whole world was really down, China's actually quite up there. But when everybody was easing away, that's when China just started, declaring their lockdown, and of course, by force from the people. Unfortunately, China had to declare. Okay, they had a zero COVID policy, but eventually, by force, people got themselves out. The government had to reverse these things. But again, the other problem is the fact that while China's just eased situations, people still don't trust the data from China. A few countries, without having to mention them, they're still saying, you still have to go into quarantine if you're coming from China. So while China's actually eased situations, but again, these countries, the effects of the COVID policy, which they had, there was a lot of money that was printed in 2020, not just the UK, the major G7 corporations and countries, they printed a lot of money, so they're feeling the pinch. So while China says, okay, we are free for business right now, but these countries are saying we haven't actually got the money, we can't spend the money. And now we got quite a lot of shipping companies. They actually they got the ships on the sea, but just stuck on there. We can't be filled to the brim because the demand is not just there. So in a way, while China is saying we're ready for business, but what these countries are saying is we cannot afford to buy as much as we will like to. So the demand. So it's kind of like a demand situation we have. Demand shock situation, really, or supply shock situation, really, because the supply is there, but the demand is not there. We can't even afford to pay. And also, if you look at this as well, the mega corporations, even coming from the tech corporations. I think even as this morning, for example, Google announcing a cut in 12,000 employees, which is about 5% global force. In the UK, I think Google's got about 50,000 presence of the workforce. We don't know exactly how much is going to be affected, but general, worldwide round, the demand is there from China to say we are ready, or the supply is there, but the big employers and the big consumers of we're talking about the G7 again, they are saying, what, we haven't got the demand, we just haven't got the power to to demand for these products as much as we would like to. So right now the money is actually going into fixing the economy and balancing the books in a way. That's what they're trying to do. So while China came in, but it's a tad bit too late. Had it been that they were on the same playing field back then, I think things would have been able to move at the same ground. But right now, because we're not on the same page with the world or with the rest of the world or the Eastern world, things are not exactly moving the same way. So it came in a little bit too late. So things are just going to have to take time before things are level again. And there's the issue of contraction, and of course we're talking about depreciation and what's the word I'm looking for? recession, which they're saying, okay, this is actually cringing. In fact, UK is actually already in one, even though America hasn't officially announced, but there's the data to show that, even America, as the biggest consumer in the world, is already in a recession. They haven't officially announced it, but GDP has been contracting, quarter on quarter on quarter. So the world is just taking measures, but even if you don't want to accept it, global corporations are cutting down and the demand is just very weak at the moment. So regardless of what China does, whether you open for business or not, the demand is not really as strong, unfortunately.
Well, I must thank you so much for your time. It's always interesting talking to you. I've been speaking to Mr. Gbenga Onifade, who's a startup founder of the Wealth Hackers. He joined us from the United Kingdom. I wish you a profitable 2023. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.